Welcome, everyone, to our second annual Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in Pancreas Symposium. It's great to have everyone here, and of course, our esteemed speaker, Dr. Conwell. And before I introduce him, I would like just to give you a little brief introduction about how this day or night came about. This night used to be called Women in the Pancreas Symposium, and for several years, Ashok or past presidents would ask us and Aida to organize the night and then bring people together, and we would have lively discussions. But what we realized that a lot of the things that apply to women actually apply to a lot of us, and regardless of gender, race, color, that really involved all of us. It should really involve not only women. Even though women just made progress, we still have more progress to do. We wanted to name this session Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in Pancreas Symposium. We had our first last year. It was a robust session. It was a great participation, great discussion, and we are so honored to have Dr. Conwell this time joining us. And our hope and our goals is that through our conversations and experiences to understand our struggles that we have all through our lives and help each other, and not only each other, our profession, but also our patient and the next generation move forward and faster, and hopefully with less difficulty going forward. So that's what we hope, and hopefully this is just the beginning of that. And Dr. Conwell actually was the Paul Webster Lecture awardee today, and you heard about about him and his accomplishments. I don't know if I want to repeat all that. I will just say a few things. That he's a professor of medicine and Jack Gill Endowed Chair in Internal Medicine. He recently became chair of internal medicine at Kentucky College of Medicine. And he really, truly dedicated his life and career to betterment of people and people with pancreatic diseases, and also for the next generation and raising next generation, regardless of, I think, pediatric or adult. And he has mentored also people with pediatric background, and he helped the development of the pancreatitis severity criteria, as you probably heard during one of our sessions today. I had the chance to work with him in one of the NIH and IDDK symposium, and we were on a paper together. And if you may know that, that Darwin's energy and enthusiasm is very infectious. It kind of just gets to you pretty quickly. And he's also one of the PIs of the CPDPC consortium that you probably heard multiple times during this meeting, and also T1 DPAC consortium. So making a lot of impact on our field. And if you have interacted with Darwin, you would just say that he really, really, truly, deeply cares about what he does. So, and then today he's going to talk about life ain't been no crystal stair. And if you have heard him talk, I'm sure it's going to be truly inspiring. So looking forward to your talk, Darwin.
Well, good evening, everybody. And this was a surprise, but I'm more than happy to talk about this. And this is my second time today, so I'll be drinking some water periodically to keep my voice going. But I really spent a lot of time thinking about this talk and praying about this talk and what I would say to us, as well. I'll be speaking to myself and to all of us. And it can be a challenge, but we need to be the change that we seek in the world. And it's up to us to do that wherever we are positioned, whether it's in Minnesota or it's in California or Ohio. We have to be the change that we seek. So I'm going to just share some thoughts with you, and we'll just go from there. I could not be where I am without these two people. And this year they celebrated 60 years of marriage, my mom and dad. And I'll just simply say this. My dad worked 3 jobs to get me through undergraduate school. He worked in an oil refinery. He did janitorial work. He fixed adding machines and typewriters, which don't exist anymore. And my mom worked tirelessly because they had a son that liked science and math. And it was amazing. But my dad wanted to mortgage his house when I told him what the tuition was at medical school. And I wouldn't let him do it. I said, you know what? There are loans. We can get this done another way. But we grew up in Appalachia and in a poor environment. So it was a challenge for us to get that done. But we will talk a little bit more about them. But 60 years of a marriage, pretty amazing. So what I want to do, where do we need to go? I think illumination. I just want to just shine some light. I want to challenge you, I want to challenge me. And this may feel uncomfortable at times, and that's okay. We are in a safe space to be uncomfortable, talk to each other, share with each other, take the emotion out of it. We've all been through things, but let's talk about this to each other, during your dinner or whatever, and take it back with you and say, what can we do differently where we are? It may get prickly at times, but I want you to remember something. And my wife always says this, well, Darwin, you love everybody. So, you're a poor judge of people, but I do. I love you all. This organization means a lot to me. The people here mean a lot to me. I like people, and I like to support people and help them become successful and help them avoid some of the hardships I went through and make the path a little bit better for them. And most people know that. All of us are doing that. We're going to share some data. If you want to hear about my journey, you can just go to YouTube and just type my name in and type in my journey, and you can just listen to this play. This was done several years ago. I want to talk about diversity as a strategy, and then talk about sustainable transformation that we are doing at the University of Kentucky that I am extremely honored to be a part of. And then we're going to talk about what exactly is this crystal stair and diversity, equity, and inclusion in pictures. I have 28,000 photos in the cloud, and I just keep taking pictures. I love taking pictures with my cell phone, and we'll talk about that. And then I want to close with the remarks of Theodore Roosevelt. But by 2050, greater than 50% of the US population will be non-white. And this is the fact of the matter. There has been a growth in the US medical schools in overall URM recruitment, but a lot of it remains flat for specific groups. And I'm an African-American male. So I'm going to give you an African-American male perspective, okay? We will talk about other things, but what I am talking about also applies to, like they said earlier, applies to a lot of us, right? But for African-American males, it's been pretty flat. And actually it's at an alarming rate that we're trying to intercede and make a big difference. So it will take 1,000 years for Blacks to equal population proportion in medical education. I don't have 1,000 years. None of us has 1,000 years. So something's got to be done differently to make that happen. So this is an article that came out actually from this new group called the Association of Black Gastroenterologists, Hepatologists. And it's a grassroots organization of Black gastroenterologists and hepatologists across the country. And the first time I went to that meeting, I did not realize we had that number of Black gastroenterologists, hepatologists in the US. And they didn't realize it either because everyone got together and they said, wow, I can't believe this. We met at the American College of Gastroenterology, we met online. It was pretty amazing. But this was a survey that they did of 1,200 physicians. And so what are the barriers to workforce diversity? It makes sense. There's insufficient representation of people traditionally under recruited to medical school, and also for females. And it's across the board. You need to see people that look like you, that have your experience, that can relate to you, for you to excel. It helps you, it empowers you, it encourages you. That person is there, they look like me, they've had my experience, I can do this. So it's very, very important. So what's the solutions? Well, to improve and to increase mentorship, to increase societal leadership opportunities And we've done that here at the APA. I'm very happy to see this happening here and have shadowing opportunities. Open up your clinics, open up your offices to people who are underrepresented and give them the opportunity to see what it's like. I will never forget Dr. Crow in Ironton, Ohio, where I grew up. He did 1 year after medical school. And that's why when I went to medical school, I called my mom and dad and I said, wait a minute, this is not going to be over after medical school. There's an internship and there's a residency. And they were like, what is that? I said, I don't know. Dr. Crow didn't do this. And Dr. Crow, God bless his heart, he gave me his microscope when I went to medical school. And this microscope was a single, this is one of these old, I took it gracefully. Thank you, Dr. Crow. It was in a wooden case. And if anyone know how those microscopes use, I took it with me. I said, thank you very much. But it's, we need to see people that look like us. We need to really, what I think is push back the darkness. I really believe that's important for us in our states, in our nation, in our world. We need to be the change that we seek, and we really need to push back the negative rhetoric and the darkness that overclouds things, because we want our children and our grandchildren to have a much better future, right? And there's a lot of issues that we have to deal with, but we have to be instruments of change. And again, you got to be the change that you seek in the world. Well, the problems that we have in medical education has really hit the mainstream media. This is an article in Fortune. It says Black women account for less than 3% of US doctors. Is healthcare finally ready to face racism and sexism? This is an emergency medicine physician. A lot of African-American and Black females are quitting medicine. They're just giving up, and it's a true fact. There are challenges. Why so many women physicians are quitting? This is a Harvard Business Review article. If you ever want to know about anything, go to Google, type in the sentence, type in the words, and finish it with Harvard Business Review, or just HBR. You'll get about 15 articles on COVID, artificial intelligence, how to stay married, anything you want, and they've got it. The other thing is the post-pandemic research shows academia is losing women at an alarming rates. And I got to give Zobeda Cruz Monserrati, Dr. Monserrati, credit for this, because, if you are a woman in academia, you've got some challenges that I didn't know you had. I didn't know about the daycare situation. And we have the same daycare problem at the University of Kentucky. You put your name on the list, your kid will be 3 or 4 years old before they call you. That's a major problem. And that needs to be fixed. And we got to talk to deans. We have to figure out that it's really kind of false advertising to say that your university, your medical center has childcare for you, because they really don't have that. And so and I'm sure this is not unknown in your other institutions, but that's just one example of something that's real. And if you are a PhD in academia, you may have to make some very tough decisions if you're a female and you decide to have a family. What's wrong with having a family? I have a family. I like having a family, and you shouldn't be punished because you are a female and you decide to have children. There's nothing wrong with that, but our system is not necessarily set up to help you achieve all of that. So I think we're at a crossroads, and as I said, we need to be the change that we seek. So how we leave here, we need to leave here differently and think about how we can make a difference. So the AAMC has made a framework for addressing and eliminating racism in the AAMC, in academic medicine and beyond. And I'll this one quote says, all academic medicine leaders, including the AAMC, must step up and transform rhetoric into action. And so this is obviously very important for all of us. And this includes us in the APA. What can we do to be agents of change? They have 4 pillars: individual self-reflection on systemic racism, and then anti-racism efforts within their organization, the AAMC itself, anti-racism efforts within the academic medical community, and also anti-racism efforts within the broader community. And so I looked at that and I kept saying anti-racism, anti-racism. What is anti-racism? What exactly is that? So let's spend a little bit of time on this slide. And what is anti-racism? How do we become anti-racist? All of us. So where are we if we were to measure ourselves in regard to racism? What zone are we in? Are we in the fear zone, learning zone, or in a growth zone? So what is the fear zone? I deny racism as a problem. I avoid hard questions. I strive to be comfortable. And being comfortable is really cool, right? It's okay to go to your office and be comfortable, but there are problems that are out there. And a lot of times that's just fear. You don't want to face it. We don't want to face it. I talk to others who look and think like me. That's comfortable. That's very comfortable. And but that's considered the fear zone. Let's move to the learning zone. I recognize racism as a present and current problem. I seek out questions that make me uncomfortable. Now that's a challenge. That's a challenge for us. I understand my own privilege in ignoring racism. So some people do have privilege, and the term white privilege, I've never heard of white privilege until about 2 years ago. I didn't know what it was. And I didn't know what equity and inclusion and DEI and all this stuff. Man, there's a lot of conversation about this, right? So let's figure out what the difference is between diversity, equity, and inclusion. We'll talk about that. But I think getting an education about this and learning about this is very, very important for us. And it's a challenge to do that. It gets uncomfortable to do that. But as I say, if you want to push back the darkness and you want the world to be a better place for your children, your nieces and nephews, your grandchildren, generations later, you've got to stand up and you've got to do something about it. Otherwise, the world will never change. The other thing I'll say is about learning. It says, I am vulnerable about my own biases and knowledge gaps. I listen to others who think and look differently than me. So this is what we need to teach our children, right? And it's not easy, but we have to have conversations about this. We need to face our fears. We need to learn. And finally, we need to grow. So what about growth? It says, I identify how I unknowingly benefit from racism. I promote and advocate for policies and leaders that are anti-racist. I sit with my discomfort, acknowledge it, I recognize it, I own it. I speak out when I see racism in action. That is hard to do. That really gets you out of your comfort zone. It's much easier to be quiet. That is hard to do. I educate my peers how racism harms our profession. I don't let mistakes deter me from being better. I yield positions of power to those otherwise marginalized. Now that's also a challenge, right? Are we willing to relinquish power to let those people who are underrepresented assume power because they're equally qualified, not just because they are Black, not just because they are Hispanic, not just because they are a female, it's because they're qualified. Never give someone a job just because of their race, color, or creed. That really destroys what we're trying to do here, right? They just happen to be a female. They happen to be Hispanic. And then that will elevate the culture because you'll bring in more diverse thought that you've never even heard of before, culture and richness to the conversation, but hire them because they are qualified, all right? So this is important. So the other thing I'll say is I surround myself with others who think and look differently than me. So this is becoming anti-racist. And I've heard people, when we talk about this, you may be in different zones based on where you are. If you're at a Black male barbershop, you're going to be in a different zone. If you're at your family reunion with your uncle who doesn't like people that doesn't look like him, you're in a different zone. So think about this. I'm happy to send these slides out, but this will educate us, and you can pull this up on Google. and work on yourselves. We all have things that we need to work on. So I think diversity should be a strategy. Diversity enhances growth and progress. And I'll just say this, IBM did this. They actually expanded their minority markets dramatically by promoting diversity in its own workforce. And that is a game changer when you do that. I've done that, I've experienced that. The result is a virtuous cycle of growth and progress. All right, so this is diversity as strategy, Harvard Business Review. Again, I mean, there's a lot there. This is what happens when you hire people in healthcare that look like the people in the surrounding community. This is Daryl Gray. Daryl Gray, obviously, is an African-American male. What you see, that chart is the volumes of endoscopy per month at an inner city hospital called University Hospital East in Columbus. They had a brand new endoscopy unit. No one went there. They didn't want to go to the emergency room. It was surrounded by inner city African-Americans, Hispanics, Somalians. Nobody, they didn't want to go. They didn't trust the people. And we brought in someone that looked like them, could understand them, could talk to them, and actually said, hey, we need to get translators in here. It was, who speaks, no one here speaks Somalian, no one here speaks. And so we changed the landscape. And what happened was exponential growth. And when Daryl moved on from that leadership position, we brought in another leader that looked like them. And this was a female leader, and this was Lan LeConte. And she continued that growth and that expansion. And now patients love to go to University Hospital East. It's crowded. So this brings us to recruiting and rules for recruiting. Never just recruit a body. I'll tell you one thing, you gotta recruit the spouse. Don't recruit just someone who's talented, because no one wants to be around a talented person that has no emotional intelligence. They'll drive you crazy, right? And when I went to university, now I'm always recruiting. Zobeda will tell you that I am always recruiting. Right now in my pocket, I've got tons of cards. And anybody's looking for a job in Kentucky, let me know. I got plenty of packages. So one of my mentors said, okay, Darwin, you're gonna be a chair. You got 5 years. Then after that, your goose is cooked. So we'll see. But I'm always recruiting, and you need to recruit the spouse. You really, when I went there and did my first grand rounds, they asked me a question. They said, well, Dr. Conwell, you do a lot of research. Are all your division chiefs going to need to be researchers? I said, absolutely not. We have a tripartite mission: education, research, patient care. I said, we want to hire the most talented person with the highest level of emotional intelligence, with leadership skills for this position. We'll surround them with educators. We'll surround them with researchers. We'll surround them with clinicians and make the division better and lift the department. I said, but we don't want to hire any toads, all right? We don't want to hire people that cannot speak and relate to human beings, right? And so there's just no room for that. Our learners, which are our medical students, are mimicking our behavior. They don't know how to be doctors. They don't know how to be PhD scientists. They are mimicking us. I mean, I look at Zobeda's lab, and she has all these postdocs and people there, and they are becoming great. They're becoming great because she's great. And they're mentoring and watching her do what she does. All right. And that's just one example. So we need to hire the right people. So be careful when you're hiring people. And by the way, Kentucky is beautiful. Just ask my wife. So there's some effective domains, mentorship, definitely is needed. Financial support, like I mentioned, financial support for me personally, this space, and African Americans by in general make less money than Caucasians. These things we already know. I mean, it depends where you are. So you may have to come up with financial packages to help. At University of Kentucky, they have a lot of packages to give underrepresented groups a bump up, and not to increase their salary, but to help the divisions and departments hire them to help bring people in so they can relieve some of the financial burden. And we all know medical school costs a fortune now. And think about the hundreds of thousands of dollars that people have in expenses. And it's just a burden to think about the amount of money you're going to be left to deal with, loans to pay off. This is an important article. It's becoming old, but the reality of this article is still here. It's called The Pool and the Pipe. We have a reservoir of people to go to medical school. to go to graduate school, to get a PhD, to get their MD or MD PhD. But there are leaks in the pipe. And so less people get there. And we touched on some of those reasons, if you're female, if you're Black, we touched on some of those. The future state needs to be that pool. We need to get them in the pipeline and get them matriculated. That's what we call this, matriculation, right? Through and increase the number of people that exit this. And that's the challenge. So I'm very proud to be at the University of Kentucky because their Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is doing a lot of great things. I'm going to share with you some things that we are doing at the University of Kentucky and how we are fixing the leaking pipe. I call it the leaking pipe. This is Stephanie White, our Senior Associate Dean for Medical Student Education, and she is doing a lot of things. According to the article that I referred to, things that you need to do to increase underrepresented minority recruitment and retention is NIH and private sector programs, support good mentors, establish medical school champions for diversity, provide subsidized time for URM faculty to engage in mentoring, engage in community activities, establish institutional endowments, create supportive environments to minimize the attrition of minority women, establish an NIH-wide initiative to address underrepresentation. So this is important, and these are some of the things that we can do to help with this. So she's a champion. Now I'm going to show you some of the things that we are doing. This is called Black Boys and Men in Medicine. It's called BAM, and the College of Medicine supports it. There was a BAM meeting this morning. I was not there. Today they learned about diabetes. They had we always have a chef in talk about healthy eating and nutrition. We always tie nutrition into whether it's the respiratory system, digestive system, doesn't matter. And these are young men in grade school, middle school, high school, who are interested in science and math. And there's a program called BMW Academy, Black Men Working Academy. This academy is supported by a lot of people on the outside, like Toyota and other organizations. And BMW Academy guarantees your son a full 4-year scholarship if they participate in their program and finish the program through high school. I don't know how many years minimum they have to be. I'm just getting there, but BAM is part of that program. So the ones that are interested in math and science or thinking about health careers, the University of Kentucky has also guaranteed 4-year scholarships. And they have scholarships all around the country that universities have partnered with them to provide this for young Black men, all right? And so that is, it's very inspiring. It's wonderful. I mean, we always have a chef that cooks a great meal, a vegetarian meal or a healthy meal, and ties it in with the respiratory system and other things that we do in the science. We have a nice craft, but these are young people trying to make a difference. And this is what we need to see in the news besides the negative that we see in the news. This is positive. So unfortunately, most of our news is bad news and not good news. So this is critical. I told you it will take 1,000 years. 1,000 years, that's a long time. But the NIH is making a major investment. And this is called the FIRST grant. It's called the Faculty Institutional Recruitment for a Sustainable Transformation. FIRST, the NIH FIRST. And so when I got to the University of Kentucky, I was asked to join them in writing this grant. And this is called the UK FIRST. And this is based on recruitment, support, promotion, and then helping those faculty to thrive. And those are PhDs, MDs, MD, PhD, physician scientists. And it's a very comprehensive program that's put together by this person. This is one of the 3 people, Lisa Cassis, who's the Vice President of Research, and she's organized the University of Kentucky Resource Priority Areas. And this is the amount of funding that those research priority areas have. So who's in the research priority areas? PhDs, MDs, that have gotten together and written grants, and they decided, you know what, I'm interested in diabetes and obesity. I'm interested in cancer. And so they've gotten all the people interested in that together and formed a research priority area. So imagine recruiting somebody who's a junior faculty and you put them into this wonderful milieu of academically NIH funded people. Imagine what can happen. And that's going to be sustainable transformation. And that's what we're trying to do. And I'm really proud to be a part of it. I was happy to participate in this. So Lisa Cassis was an MPI on this grant, and she's been NIH funded forever. The next person is Nancy Schoenberg, who has put together a thing called a Research Scholars Program. So the Research Priority Area, the Research Scholars Program already in place at Kentucky went into the first grant. And you can see what the Research Scholars Program does. In a year, these people are ready to write an NIH grant. And they get a lot of they get peer mentoring, near peer mentoring, senior mentoring, grant writing. You have to apply for it. You got to pay for it. Take about 6 people per year, and it's very, very successful. Other things that I want to just show you that's important that we don't talk about. These are some topics that are uncomfortable, but there's also micro learning topics that Stephanie has put together, and I want to just read some of those off to you. Things like trans and gender diverse mental health, adoptive families, refugees and trauma, sleep, health, equity. I need that. I don't sleep very well, so I need to go to that one. But I don't send text messages and emails anymore at night. I learned that. So the Ohio State people will be happy to see that Dr. Conwell is improving. LGBTQ plus health, well, every now and then Tizzle Beta. Disparities, food insecurity, and other rural health disparities. So these are opportunities for faculty and staff and medical students to have micro learning, right? I'll tell you one thing that we have to face, and we don't know we have it. And we talk about unconscious bias, and we think that's just, oh, that's a word or whatever. Let me give you an example. I had my first department meeting, and I did a flipped meeting where we had everyone that was going to speak, all the vice chairs, put together PowerPoint presentations, record what they were going to say. We put it all together, send it out to the faculty 2 weeks ahead of time. You could read it, speed it up, slow it down. So when you came to the faculty meeting, it was instant engagement, instant conversation. So some people were in person, some people were Zooming. In the middle of this, where I thought things were going very, very well, we've been very successful, someone put something in the chat. And because we only had one slide for this meeting, one slide, and the slide was an outline. Who was going to speak? Dr. Conwell was going to speak, Dr. McClure is going to speak, and then it said, Sally and Jill are going to talk. And someone said, Dr. Conwell, did you notice on your slide that you referred to the male doctors as doctor, and you did not refer to the female as doctors? And this came in on the chat. And Zobeda's already told me about this. I thought I dealt with this before already. But this is an unconscious, I had no idea I did that. I looked at the slide, there's 400 faculty online. I said, you know what? I made that slide. And you're exactly right. I can't believe I did that. So I immediately apologized to my vice chairs. I had to own that. I had to own it. I made that mistake. That's an unconscious bias. So I quickly flipped. I said, this is the reason why all of you need to sign up for unconscious bias training. So anyway, it's important. These things are important. So Mike, so what else? Engaging in community activities is very important for underrepresented minorities because they're trying to give back to their communities that they came from. And a lot of them were under-supported, undervalued. It's very, very important. I can tell you, my wife and I do this a lot. So I'm now at a different institution, different city. It's the same message. We're in the churches, we're in the community centers, we're in the parking lots. And what this shows you, BAM you saw, there I am in the middle. Those are two balloons. That was when we did the respiratory system in BAM. The bottom right is Kathy and I, my wife, at a community health and wellness event with a table supporting the National Pancreas Foundation Black and African American Pancreatitis and Pancreas Cancer Initiative, because we know that African Americans have a very high rate of diabetes, pancreatitis, pancreas cancer. The worst outcomes are in Black males compared to white males, Black females compared to white females. And so this is a problem, and they have a lot of risk factors. So we were there just handing out material that the NPF will give you for free. They'll ship it right to your home, and you can participate in health fairs and get the word out. And they have beautiful documents and pamphlets for you to use. And so there's a big initiative. So engaging in community events is a lot of fun. So the challenge is for us, not just you, me, all of us, is to face our fears, is to learn, it is to grow. So what happens when you decide to take on the task to be a plumber? What happens when you decide to fix the pipe where you are? I'm going to show you what happens because it happened to me. Peter Banks is a plumber. Peter Banks was fixing the pipe at the Brigham, and he invited me to come to the Brigham. And he didn't care that he had white privilege. All he wanted was to bring me to Boston and mentor me and teach me, because he saw I was at the Cleveland Clinic with no mentor, trying to learn pancreatic disease on my own. And he saw an opportunity to help a guy. He didn't care if I was Black. He didn't care if I was a female. I could have cared less. He said, what about coming to Boston? I just come to Boston. And when this happens, it can enhance your academic productivity, and your ability to achieve really can be limitless. And this is what, if you put me up on PubMed, you see that, that's the Brigham. That's the Brigham. That was me, Beach and Woo, Vikesh Singh, Peter, writing papers left and right, because we were in an environment where we had support to do it. And so this is what happens when you decide to fix your pipe. So be the change that you need to be. The other thing that happens is you can accomplish things that you never dreamed possible. President of the APA. I went to my first APA in 2000, and Chris Forsmark and Peter Banks were leading that. It was an IAP, APA meeting together. I had 2 oral presentations, and it was in Chicago. And some of us know about Chicago. Those of us who have a little more gray hair remember the Chicago days and the plumbing and the heat, and it was not good there. But I went there and I had 2 oral presentations on the CCK endoscopic function test, the secretin endoscopic function test, and I got eviscerated. I got filleted open. I got challenged, and I was sweating bullets. And I remember I said, well, the only thing I can do now is just write down what they're saying, because I don't have any answers to these questions. And these are the authoritarians in pancreatic disease, but they challenged me. They really, really challenged me. I will never forget, I met 2 people that day. I met 2 people during that conference that actually changed the course of my academic career. So when that was over, I left and went to the bathroom, and I was sweating like crazy. And a tall man came in and he said, hi, I'm Peter Banks. Keep doing what you're doing. You have a lot of work to do, but you're doing good work. I said, wow, Dr. Banks. And I'd heard of Peter Banks. And a few years later, he invited me to come to Boston. The other thing that happened that meeting is when I was leaving the hotel, I was standing waiting on a cab. There was no Uber then, it was cabs. And there was another man standing there. His name was Jose Serrano, who I didn't know from anybody. He handed me his card. He goes, hi, I'm Jose Serrano. I'm at the NIDDK, and I think you should write for a K23. And I said, what's a K23? I didn't know what this was. But I was very excited, because I needed some protected time. I had no protection. I was doing 100% work. I was doing this in the evenings and weekends, but I was excited. I'd walk around with these Excel spreadsheets with names and these bicarb values, and I was really excited, and it was, paper. It was paper, and I actually would tape. I would print. This is not too far ago, guys. I mean, when you did Microsoft Excel, when you hit print, you have to set it up to where it prints, and then you start taping the pages together. That was your research. This is pre-internet, We had 1 computer in my fellowship program for doing PowerPoint presentations. That was it. But there was everything was on paper. Your charts were this thick. There were always people walking around pushing all these paper charts around from the hospital floor. It was different then. But I remember I needed a different environment, and I got a different environment when I went to Boston. And I'll never forget this. I talked to Jose, I'm not sure when we talked, and he said, now you can get a grant. And people sat down with me, they worked with me, they helped me. I was at the NPF Fellows Symposium trying to understand more about pancreatic disease. And Dr. Saluja, put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "This young man needs a grant." Now, that meant a lot because someone believed in me enough to say, this guy is doing enough. He needs a grant. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget Peter Banks. I'll never forget Jose. Amazing what can happen if you just step out of your comfort zone and give somebody a hand. And that was given to me, and it's been wonderful. So I just want to tell you, your ability to achieve is limitless. And so here's my wife and I, Kathy, with our UK mask on. We're doing one of our interviews. Bottom left is me doing endoscopy at the hospital. In the center is a NPF symposium on pancreatitis and pancreas cancer in the Black population. The upper right is me, Darwin Conwell, the kid from Ironton, Ohio, with healthcare leaders celebrating the 60th anniversary of the medical center, walking around with the CEO, the COO in a nice suit. Can you believe this? I'm like, wow, this is really happening to me. And it's limitless. And then of course, getting the award from Caper, and now I got 2 awards here. I mean, I'm not deserving of this. I just say thank you very much. And I'm just blessed to be here. And I thank God for the opportunity to help. Now, what is the crystal stare? Did anybody look this up? Okay, good. Oh, you did. Phil did. Okay, not surprising. All right, the crystal stare. So the crystal stare. So the term crystal stare comes from a poem in 1922 written by Langston Hughes, who's an American poet, social activist, novelist, playwright, and columnist in the Harlem Renaissance. And the mother in the poem uses a metaphor of climbing a staircase to convey the hardships of Black life in America. And we all know what Black life in America was. You know, there was slavery, there was civil rights, and you see that there. But this is a crystal stare. I actually found a crystal stare on Google. It's amazing. And that crystal stare is it's made of crystal. It's not made of wood. There's no splinters. It's perfect. And so that's what the crystal stare represents. And she said, life ain't been no crystal stare. And the poem is a beautiful poem. I'm not going to read it all to you, but she talks about climbing and continuing to climb, and how, you know, the stairs have cracks and splinters. And what she's talking about is the struggle and the challenge. And all of us who've achieved things have had struggles and challenges and told, you can't do this. You're not deserving. You're not worthy. But she's encouraging her son to continue forward. If you keep climbing, you may become the president of the United States. You may become the vice president of the United States. Now, if you look at the Supreme Court right now, all of us can identify with somebody there. There are men, there are women, there's Hispanics, there's Black. I mean, forget politics. This is beautiful. And so you've got to keep going because you can accomplish great things. So this is the poem Mother to Son. You can go to Google and look it up. It's phenomenal to read. Let's talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion as we wrap things up. I talked about this at Pancreas Fest. I would really tell you to go to YouTube and type in the Sneetches and watch a 4-minute video on the star-bellied and non-star-bellied Sneetches, and watch how ridiculous it is to differentiate someone because they have a star on their belly. But we do that based on what we see, skin color, gender, whatever. And it's really silly. It really, really teaches you about diversity, equity, and inclusion. But I think the solution to all of our DEI, I'm not a DEI expert. I mean, I haven't been that, you know, the solution to DEI is treating people the way you want to be treated. It's the golden rule. Just treat people the way you want to be treated. That's the solution to DEI. And so I just showed some, this is diversity in pictures. And some people are not here. I don't have enough room to put all the photos I have on my phone here. But Dr. Saluja, there's Jose Serrano, Peter Banks, Phil in the upper right, Phil snuck in again in the bottom left. Then there's, of course, the Goes. I'll tell you a quick story. My very first paper that I wrote was on amylase secretion from the pancreas collected with a dryling tube. It was a terrible, terrible, terrible paper. And Dr. Go called me on the phone and said, I want to, we got to talk about this paper. And he didn't reject it. He said, this paper needs to be rewritten. And he helped me write that paper. And he's done that for a lot of people. But I will never forget him doing that. And his wife, God rest her soul, it's really unusual not to see them together, right? We always see them together. And Ed and Jeannie Purich, and Ed's not here this time. And these are people that have helped me. Ed Purich, I flew to DC to discuss some research with him. And he talked so much, I missed my flight back. Dhiraj Yadav, Evan Fogel, these are people that I've come in contact with. And this is diversity in action. This is the APA, this is Pancreas Fed, this is us. This is the people in this room. We are very, very diverse. And of course, these are people that there's Mysum, there's Aaliyah, there's Obeda, there's Aida, George Papacristal, Luis Lara, people from Ecuador, Greece, Puerto Rico. This is us, right? And so two things I want to show you is on the bottom right, these are at some point, I'm not sure circa when it was, but we had a grand rounds called Women in Gastroenterology. And these are all the women I had recruited to that date in our GI division. And we had a lot of fun. But the bottom left is a moment that I will never forget. Zobeda will never forget. This was the greatest day in my academic career as a leader. On that day, we had a female get an endowed chair in IBD. It was a huge endowed chair. And the exact same day, Zobeda got her first R01 grant. And you see us down there, we could barely contain ourselves. We were so happy because the struggle, the work that it goes into getting an R01 from the NCI. Are you kidding me? That's a lot of work. And then later on, she's pregnant and going to deliver her baby, and she fires off an R21 and gets a perfect score. It just happened to be pregnant, And I just, amazing. So what else happens? Well, you get collaborations, start working with people. And so I just did a quick query and kind of updated this, but these are the people I've worked with who I've collaborated with, articles I have with. Some of us are writing Harrison's textbook of internal medicine chapters. Some of this comes out of NAP, some of this comes from Harvard, some from the CPDPC, but these are the people you get to work with. Also, you get to reach back and touch these rising stars, and you see them, they're here, Dr. Gumper is here, Jamie Solomon, Anna Evans, you get to touch these people and help them on their journey. And we have a couple papers together, but we'll have more in the future. This is Obeda's beautiful baby. She said I could share this, so I did. So I'm wrapping up. So we talked about mother to son, but father to son. This is my dad. It's at a family reunion. That's him in the background. He said, my dad has a very unique way of saying my name, and just the way he says it is just different than other people. And he says, Darwin, he says, right is always right, even if everyone is not doing right. And he would say, Darwin, wrong is always wrong, even if everyone is doing wrong. So I want to read this to you. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Theodore Roosevelt. So I want to thank you all. I think we've had a little bit of a journey here. We've challenged ourselves on what we need to do to really push back the darkness. Life ain't been no crystal stair, but I would say just keep climbing. And what you can achieve is really limitless. I want to thank you from the University of Kentucky. And I always have to thank this beautiful, lovely lady, Kathy. Thank you all. We're going to have dinner now?
Thank you. Thank you, Darwin, for an amazing presentation and an amazing story. It's true, life is not a crystal stair. And it has not been for you or for many others. I have known you for many, many years, almost when you started. First Pancreas meeting and, as you mentioned, presentations. So I've seen you struggle through years. All of us did. And you did. And now you are at place, chair of medicine, before that, GIG. How do you really react when someone will say, Darwin became chair because he's Black. Darwin did this because they don't know that you struggled to publish 200 papers and you have done, you built Ohio GI from 12 to 40, they don't know that. So how do we deal with that kind of thing, which happens to you and to many others like that?
So the question is, how do you deal with it when, essentially there's like this imposter syndrome, right? And it's not, it's just kind of being put on you that you don't really belong here. You got here because you were Black or you're a female or whatever. I mean, we can't change people's minds. We can't, if someone is a racist or a bigot or just, they are what they are. I was just taught to work hard. If I'm now in the position of chair of medicine, I'm going to do the best job I can, irrespective of being Black or female. And I hope that my performance will one day prove to them that, I deserve to be here. But I'm not going to do the job to try to prove to them that I deserve to be here. I'm going to do the job, period. And so whether they want me here or not, or they think I'm here, there's not much I can do to change that. For me personally, I do a lot of praying. I read my Bible. I do a lot of meditation and thinking early in the mornings to prepare myself to go to work and face the challenges that are ahead of me. And there are challenges every single day. All of us have these challenges. Challenges are, here's something I tell my faculty. A patient's in your office and they've waited 6 months to see you. On your way to work, you get cut off in traffic. You may have had an argument with your spouse or one of your kids is acting up and you get in there and you're 15 minutes late and that patient has been waiting 6 months to see you. Now you gotta take a pause and have some high-level emotional intelligence and breathe and give that person the adequate amount of time. These are challenges that we all face. When I was, my very first internal medicine residency clinic, the very first one, I was the only African-American in the entire hospital residency program, all residency programs, all of them. Medicine, surgery, OB-GYN, run the list, radiology. I was the only Black resident in the hospital. And I went to clinic with my black bag, and I was really excited, and thought I did a good job taking care of hypertension, diabetes, typical internal medicine clinic. And my chief resident called me and said, Darwin, there's a problem. I got to talk to you. And I said, okay, John, what's going on? He goes, well, Mrs. So-and-so, who you saw, is complaining. I said, about what? And he says, Darwin, she just can't have a black doctor. She just cannot have a black doctor. And I said, what do you mean? So she told us she does not want a black doctor. And I said, but what did you tell her? He goes, I told her we would reassign her to another doctor. And I said to him, I said, John, I think that was wrong. And that really hurt my feelings because I had to see her for the next 3 years, periodically in clinic. But I don't know what to say besides surround yourself by positive people. Surround yourself by people who are encouragers and supporters of you. Surround yourself by sponsors and mentors who believe in you. I'd recommend you get an academic coach. I have one. I've had one for many, many years to bounce things off of. I have a great wife that I talk to about who knows everything about everything and can give me the truth and speak into my life, the hard stuff, But life is going to be challenging, but you got to get up. And also you learn from failures. You're not going to be perfect. And I'm a big Star Wars fan. And Yoda said to Luke Skywalker once, he said, failure is our greatest teacher. And I believe in that if you allow it to teach you and you don't get angry and bitter, if you allow it to teach you the lesson that you need to learn. If I do the same thing again, I'm going to fail again. I'll get the exact same outcome. What can I do differently to get a different outcome? All right. I think it's time to eat, right? Thank you all very much. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So it is our pleasure to present APA 2022 Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in Pancreas Symposium.